Hey, it's Rob B here with Rob D, and welcome to the Property Podcast. It's episode 171, and this week we're looking at serviced apartments. And are they the next big thing that you need to look at?
Yeah, thank you for joining us. This week we're talking about, like Rob said, a kind of a specific type of property investment. So we talked about HMOs last week and got into a fair bit of detail. This week we're giving an overview of a type of property investment that you might be less familiar with, maybe helping you decide if it's something that you should be thinking about or not. We've also got, after our good news story of the other week, we're returning to our normal kind of tone of doom and gloom news story. And we've got a really interesting resource of the week, which we were talking about for about 15 minutes before we hit record. So it almost delayed this podcast. That's how good it is. So loads and loads coming up. But we've got a bit of news of our own.
We have, well, part news, because we're tricky like this. The news is, next week we can tell you the news. Happy with that? Okay, let's give you a little bit more. We are going to do a summit. Now, that's not big news, but it's with a twist. What I can say is it's not in London. Okay, that's something that's a bit different. It won't be in London, but we don't know where it is yet either. We'll explain next week, but make sure you don't miss out because we've got a really, hopefully, interesting idea. We'll see. It could completely backfire. We could have our listeners fighting and falling out. We'll see. But next week, listen in because we've got an announcement about a summit, a property summit with a twist. So make sure you're listening for that. But we're really looking forward to bringing the details. We just can't tell you yet. But next week, all will be revealed.
What a tease. Yeah, it is something we've been asked about for a long time, and we think we found a fun way of doing this thing, and all will be revealed. Talking of things which might seem like a good idea but actually turn out not to be, let's go on to our news story. And here's one which somebody forwarded on to me. I'm doing my normal trick of not being able to remember who it is so I can credit them. But I think there was a link, and I think the rest of it just said OMG. I think that was all the email said. And it's a story from The Guardian. Jeremy Corbyn, when he was being elected for Labour leader, was floating the idea of right to buy for private tenants. So just like people in council homes since Thatcher have had the opportunity, they have done periodically, had the opportunity to buy the council house that they've lived in for a discount. And that's now being extended by the Conservatives to housing association tenants. Corbyn said, well, why not go one step further and let private tenants buy their house off their landlord for a discount? What could go wrong? And now this story has come back again because Civitas, which is sort of viewed as a broadly kind of centre-right think tank, have actually endorsed this idea. So I'm really not quite sure where to start with commentating on this. But I think this is possibly, if you think that you've had unpopular measures against landlords in the recent past, I think if this starts getting taken seriously, you'll start seeing whole new levels of anger.
Yeah, I can't really repeat what I felt like saying and started saying when you first showed me this story, Rob, because we're a family show. But let me just say I'm not a fan of this one. And it's just baffling, really. I'm not going to start attacking the man and his policies and his ideas because, clearly some people think this is a good idea. But also, some people thought communism was a good idea. So it's not one for me. I don't think it's going to take off. Hopefully he'll come up with a few more mainstream policies so we have a real alternative to vote for in the next election, other than some radical policies. But annoyingly, some of his ideas are actually half decent, but when he comes out with stuff like this, it's like, well, as a landlord, I can't take you seriously. But there we go. Probably alienated a few listeners there, but I'm sorry. Sorry, Jeremy. Sorry, listeners who like Jeremy, but this one seems a bit silly to me.
Yeah, well, I'll say something. I'll say something negative, then I'll try and say something sympathetic. But my additional negative about this is this is the Civitas part of it. Their commentary on the policy. They're saying that if this scheme does come in, the tenant should have lived there for a certain length of time in order to qualify for it. Which, first of all, makes you think, well, then landlords will just kick them out before they get to that point, which will make things less secure, unless some other kind of restrictions came in. And also that they're proposing that this is restricted, so it only applies to properties which are at least 25 years old, to ensure that investors are not deterred from buying new properties to rent out. But I thought the whole objection was that you get all these new builds going up, which are immediately sold to investors and overseas investors. So why it would be limited to old properties is beyond me. But I think the sympathetic thing that I can say towards this is I don't think this is the way of solving the problem, but there is a problem. And I think because of the way that housing has been for the last 20 years, it kind of feels like it's a one-way bet. It feels like if you were able to buy a house in the year 2000, then lucky old you've had all these great gains. And if anyone trying to get on the ladder now isn't going to be able to do so, and it feels a bit rigged. I think that when there's the perception that it's just a complete sure thing, then yeah, you could see how this is a good idea. But in reality, what property investment should be is people risking their capital in order to get some kind of gain. And if we're in a world where that is the reality and you have to actually, take risks, make an effort, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, then who in their right mind is going to risk their capital and effort and everything else in buying an investment property when someone can just decide to take it off them at a discount? It makes no sense. But if there is either the perception or the reality that housing is a one-way bet, then that needs to be worked on. I do not think, though, that this is the way of doing it.
Yeah, I'll go there with you, Rob. I even agree. The intention is good, and what they want, but I don't know. I find this really surprising with politics, but it doesn't seem that they've really thought it through. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I tell you what is thought through, Rob. Our topic of the week: serviced apartments. Is it the next big thing? A lot of people are talking about this right now. You may have not come across it. Don't worry, we're going to go into detail. But lots and lots of people are talking about serviced apartments. Lots of people are trying to make money telling you about serviced apartments as well. So we thought, well, actually, why not just tell you all for free? So that's what we're going to do this week.
Yeah, we'll come on to the various kind of motives of why this is becoming a big thing. But it is something you might have seen talked about in various places. You might even have stayed in a serviced apartment. I've stayed in many. People are starting to look at them as a sort of a type of property investment in a way where in the past, I think it's always been very niche. It still is niche, but it's getting a lot more prominence for various reasons. And they can be a really great investment. But as always, there are potential drawbacks. And so we're going to give, in this episode, we're not going to give you the exact how-to of how to set up a serviced apartment, but we're just going to give you the pros and cons, talk about the whole context of the thing, and help you decide if it's something that you want to look into or not. So as a first step to doing that, it would seem to make sense, Rob, to actually discuss what a serviced apartment is.
Okay, so a serviced apartment is really quite simple. It's somewhere you stay for a short period of time, and all the services are included. So when you go and stay there, you don't have to pay the gas and electric. Often cleaners are provided, things like that. Very similar to a holiday home, but really the trend, for kind of obvious reasons, is more city centre based. So people who are on city breaks or people who are travelling to a city location for business, they really, really like to take advantage of these places because they've got more facilities than a hotel, a little bit more personality often as well, and it's getting a lot easier to do. You've probably heard us discuss Airbnb before. I know, Rob, you're a huge fan of Airbnb, and there's sites like that, and Booking.com, and even TripAdvisor now you can find serviced apartments within that site if you go looking for it. So the trend is really increased, and there's loads of benefits to it. You can see why people like to use them. I've used them as well. I know Rob's used them a lot. So there are plenty of reasons why people would want to use a serviced apartment. So surely then it's a good thing to do, and we should all go and start buying serviced apartments. Well,
we'll come to that. There are reasons why we should and reasons why we shouldn't. But let's first look at why this is a trend. And Rob, you've already touched on the first part of this, which is because of the rise of sites like Airbnb.com. More people who are traveling for business and for leisure as well look to stay in serviced accommodation rather than hotels. So when I'm traveling around the UK for various reasons, if it's just a night, if I'm literally just going to be sleeping there, I'm happy staying in a hotel because I know it's going to be really, really easy and it's just going to be kind of a standardized experience. But if I'm going to be based somewhere for a few days and I want to get some work done during the day and things like that, I love staying in service departments because you tend to get more facilities. You get a kitchen, you get a lot more space. And I think because of sites like Airbnb, who are like now doing TV and cinema ads, it's becoming a real kind of mainstream proposition. A lot more people are realizing that, you can get a lot more facilities at a lower price than a hotel. So that's one reason why it's a trend. It's the supply side. There are more people wanting to stay in this type of accommodation. The other side of it is from investors creating these facilities, and they're doing that as a way of maximizing income. Now, there are a few reasons why investors have started looking into service departments as a source of income. And the general idea is that because people are just staying for a couple of nights and you're kind of competing price-wise against hotels, you can charge a lot more per night than you would do if you had it as a standard let. So yes, you have to take off the cost of providing services, electricity, cleaning, and everything else, but you're still potentially making a lot more money if you've got good occupancy because the nightly rate is so high. So investors are thinking, well, this is a great way of getting more income out of flats in city centre locations. So previously, you get a lot of fancy flats which might have great capital growth potential, but by the time you look at the rent against the purchase price, the yield isn't actually that great. So if you set it up as a service department instead and the rent effectively is higher, then rather than just being a pure growth play, you manage to get some income as well. So it's quite nice as a way of being able to squeeze more yield out of an asset that would normally be relatively low yielding. Another reason is as an alternative to HMOs. So investors who are looking for as much income as possible. So rather than thinking about capital growth, they're weighted more towards how much income they can get now, maybe because they want to use it as a means of getting out of their job and into property investment full time. HMOs have traditionally been the way to go, but there are kind of various data points to show that HMOs are kind of peaking, that there's oversaturation in some areas, which we talked about last week. And this is an alternative, the service department model, where you can make good returns, but in a very different sector of the market, where perhaps in the area where you're based, there's more demand than there is for HMOs. And another factor in this, as Rob hinted at earlier, is a few people have started selling courses on how to do it. And this is something that we saw with HMOs as well. It was getting popular for a good reason, but then it got stoked up even more by people on the property circuit telling you about all the riches that you can get from HMOs. And my perception is it's the same thing with service departments. If this is a genuine trend in terms of people who want to stay there, can be a very profitable sector of the market. So people are going and supplying it. So that's a genuine thing. And then it just gets stoked up another couple of levels by the fact that people realize, well, if I'm as well as doing it, I can also make money selling courses, telling other people how to do it. So there are many reasons why this is something that's becoming popular. And I gave it a bit of cynicism there about some of the reasons why that is, but there really are genuine benefits to it.
There are, no question. There are some real opportunities if you get it right. Because you can, as Rob's already alluded to, make a lot more money from this. The amount you can charge per night in demand areas can be really substantial, particularly if there's a big event on in your area. So if you're near a big stadium or a big race course, or there's something going on a regular basis in the place that you base your service department, the rentals can be very, very impressive. And the occupancy rates as well can be great. So the income is very, very appealing because HMOs, there's more and more regulation, there's more and more hoops to jump through. The returns are coming down. What people were accepting 2 years ago is a lot less today. People just simply don't get as much return as they used to from HMOs. So for many reasons, people are going, well, I like the idea of earning more income and I don't mind doing a bit more work like a HMO. But HMOs, seems the reward swing isn't there anymore. It is, but it's still better than a normal buy-to-let, but it seems a lot of work for the return that isn't as spectacular anymore. So people are looking for alternatives, and this could be one of those alternatives. Of course, with HMOs as well, you've got the tenant personalities and all the issues. With a service department, you don't really have that problem. Yes, you can have a difficult customer, but they're going to be gone in a few days, and you get somebody else. And then you just keep turning people over. So there's not one person that you've got to put up with for any long period of time. So having those tenant challenges that a HMO or any other property can bring you are basically removed, because yes, you might have someone who's a challenge, but as I said, they're not going to stay there long. So there are plenty of reasons why people are taking this seriously and looking into it. The problem is people are taking the allure of the income seriously, but they might not necessarily be taking the risks and the setup and the process of getting it right seriously.
Yeah, this is where I think sometimes the courses are responsible for some of this, because they've got a motive to tell you about the attractive bits and not the tricky bits. And there are some drawbacks. Of course there are. You're not just going to make loads of money really, really easily. I'll talk about the permissions side of it, which are the part that can easily get overlooked. So there are various stakeholders, I suppose, who really need to give their permission in order for you to be able to use a flat in this way. So first of all, there's the mortgage lender. If you've got a mortgage, then a term in that will be something along to the effect of the property must only be used as an AST with a maximum duration of a year or something like that, and the minimum length of the AST must be 6 months or something like that, basically saying you can't use it as short-term accommodation. Therefore, by doing so, it is a breach of your mortgage terms. That means if you're doing this 100% by the book, you should be using a specialist mortgage, which are quite hard to come by and the rates won't be particularly favourable, or you should be buying in cash, which of course will reduce your ROI because you're putting more of your own money into it. Also, because we're talking about apartments here, there's going to be a freeholder. And again, in the lease, it normally says something like, you're not allowed to use this as serviced accommodation. Now, I've talked to a few people who are doing a model like this. Some of them have just not said anything and hoped for the best. But I have spoken to one person who actually managed to get permission to use it in that way. I think the difficulty is that there's not really much of an incentive for the freeholder or the management company to give you permission because, well, you know, if it causes problems, then it's on them and it makes them look bad. So they've got no motivation to do that. So that can be tricky. And then there's planning, because short-term accommodation is technically a different use class from kind of normal residential property. So you should really be applying for a kind of a change of use. And in order to prove the need for a change of use, you need to provide evidence showing that there was no demand for it in its current form, and you doing it in its new form will be a far better idea, and it'll have positive effects for the immediate area and all that kind of thing, which is going to be pretty unlikely to be able to be achieved. Again, I'm not sure how many people actually do that, and planning is a civil, not a criminal matter. So I don't know what the likelihood is of someone pulling you up on it or how severe the consequences would be if they did. But what I'm saying is that if you're doing this 100% by the book, there are lots of obstacles to being able to do so. And additionally, what a lot of people are trying to do is to do it in a rent-to-rent kind of capacity. So you're trying to rent a flat for the normal rental amount, charge it out by the night, make a higher amount, and the difference between the two is the profit. And in that kind of situation, it's going to be very difficult to have control over all those factors because it's not your mortgage. You don't have the relationship with the management company, and so on and so on. So I think that there are difficulties, or there can be difficulties, in terms of permissions. But it's not just regulation. In terms of the actual logistics of running it, there are things that need to be taken into account as well.
There are. You've got the upfront costs. So when you finish an apartment like this, people are going to look at the photos and they're going to use the photos as a judgment to say, wow, this place looks really nice, I'm going to stay there or not. So the furniture quality that you have to use if you want the high occupancy rates needs to be really good stuff, and it needs to be new. There can't be a knackered old sofa from, you know, a charity shop that's 20 years old, that's, you know, ripped and stuff. It needs to be really nice stuff. Otherwise, you're simply not going to get the tenants, or certainly you're simply not going to get the people staying and paying the rate you want. So you've got to make sure that you go really good quality, really good stuff, all new, and that obviously costs money. You have to remember as well, and Rob made a great point here, this is what the people who sell the courses don't do. They point out the highlights more than the challenges, because you clearly, as we've already said, going to have a lot of people coming and going. So more changeovers. So you have to coordinate the cleaners and making sure it's in. Yeah, you're providing a service as well. It's not you just let somebody crack on with it. You can't really have a company manage this for you. I'm not aware of a company that will manage it in this particular way. I've seen it overseas, and maybe there are certain companies in the UK that will do it, but they're rare. So that means you have to provide the service, be available, or pay somebody to provide the service and be available. So you might get a virtual assistant, something like that, to do it for you. But still, that's a cost, either your own time or someone else's that you have to pay for. And also, there's marketing costs, absolutely, because you need to list it and make sure it's found and in the right places. But also, you can do your own stuff, your own marketing as well. Now, if that's not a particularly good skill set of yours and you're not strong at that, you may need to work with somebody who is. Again, more time, effort, potential cost there as well. You have to remember, you're in the hospitality business, not the property business. So people expect more, they have higher standards, and they're more likely to complain. So remember to cost in your time and be honest with yourself. Can you deliver what's expected? Because if you've got any doubts, it might not be for you. But also, I think, going back to what you said, Rob, about the potential drawbacks and the permissions, some people, I can imagine, are doing rent-to-rent and not even getting permission from the landlord, never mind all the other bits and pieces. But the permissions that are, I think a lot of people are avoiding. They're avoiding the permissions, and they're also avoiding mentally the work and effort that needs to go in to achieve that return, because you don't get something for nothing. If you want the big returns and the big money, you have to earn it. And yes, there are plenty of benefits and plenty of incentives to do this. But again, it's like HMOs, very, very similar. You see a lot of people who get really excited because, of course, the higher ROI, higher return on investment is alluring. You're like, oh, yes, I want some of that. And they kid themselves that they're just going to collect this money. And yeah, there's a bit of work, but I'll kind of deal with that later. You've got to be really honest with yourself and say, is this for me? Have I got the time? And do I want to give the time? And if the answer is yes to both, then absolutely carry on, investigate it more.
Yeah, I kind of put this mentally into a similar kind of bracket as HMOs, in that it's something where you can get a high return, but you do have to earn it. And it's quite niche. It's not for everyone. So people talk about passive income from property investment. And with kind of normal buy to let, you can achieve that quite well because you can outsource the vast majority of it. It just sits there, it ticks along, it deposits money in the bank, and you get growth over time. Fantastic. But then if you want to get a higher rate of return right now, then you have to be looking to other types of investment. And HMOs are one, but they're not for everyone. So I like the fact that service departments have become more of a thing, because it gives you another alternative. And yes, it is effort intensive. It is a whole different beast, and there are kind of regulatory drawbacks in the same way that there are with HMOs, but it does give you another option if it kind of fits your skill set more, or it fits your local area more. So I'm pretty positive about it if it's the right kind of thing for you. If you can get the demand and the costings right and do a good job of the marketing and operations, it can be very profitable. In the next issue of the magazine, we've got a case study of someone doing a holiday let. So it's slightly different, but he talks a lot about the marketing and the operations of it, and he really enjoys it. And it works well. So he's getting the high return, but actually enjoying the process as well. And that's brilliant. But of course, there is a lot more to think about than with a normal let. So this is where we're trying not to do our doom and gloom thing, but because we don't have a horse in this race, it's easier for us to say, here are all the great things, but here are all the things that you might not be told about that you really do need to think about honestly before you get into it.
So, food for thought. You may have not even heard this as a concept, as an idea to invest in. So hopefully this has been useful. Maybe you've been thinking about it, and maybe you're just thinking about the good things and the not so much the challenges. So hopefully it's been useful too. So if you've enjoyed this episode, let us know. Go to thepropertyhub.net/service departments. If you like this and you want us to dig deeper on this topic, more than happy to. This is for you, ladies and gentlemen. So let us know. If you want us to go into more detail and get into the nitty-gritty about how to run a service department, we'll do it. So let us know. Let us know your thoughts. Do you do it already? Is it something you've considered? Are you more interested now than before, or have we put you off slightly? Leave a comment in the show notes and we will review and make a decision on whether we do some more.
And speaking of reviewing, just to tee you up. We
nice,
do have
Rob.
an iTunes review coming. After that, we'll be having our resource of the week that nearly stopped this podcast from getting recorded, and we're going to be telling you what's coming up next week. But Rob, the review, it's an important part of the show. It's a bit of a pain sometimes for people to leave a review. The number of emails I get from people saying, "Oh, I've listened to every episode. I love it. I haven't left you a review yet. Come on, leave us a review. You'll get rewarded for your effort by having it read out by Rob Bence right now."
Ooh. And PigPag has done exactly that. I've only recently discovered the Property Hub and the great resources you provide. I can't think how I've missed it before. The podcasts are excellent, they're very informative, and on the back of your most recent recommendations, I've just been to see The Big Short. Great film, a must for anyone who has the property book. Well, thank you, PigPag. And yes, it is a great film and a great book too. Highly recommend it. We've recommended that as a resource of the week. That's The Big Short, if you're interested. So thank you very much for leaving us a review. And as Rob said, it really does help because more people find us and that means more people listen and helps us do well in the charts. And actually, Rob, we've been doing fairly well in the old podcast charts. In the business section, yesterday we were number 2 in the charts behind Mr. Tim Ferriss, who I believe is fairly popular, and ahead of some BBC podcasts. So we're doing very well. So thank you to everybody new, because we've obviously got a lot of new people jumping on board at the moment. So thank you very much. Keep us up there. Keep the reviews coming and keep listening and tell people about it. We appreciate it.
Well, we've got all these people listening, but better have a good resource. And I think we have got a good resource of the week this week. It's one that I've been aware of for a long time, but haven't used. We had to go back and check that we hadn't used it before, but we haven't. It's called Podio, Podio, podio.com. And it's effectively a project management tool. So we talk about Trello a lot on this podcast. And there's a reason for that, because as a project management tool, it's brilliant. It's extremely simple. It doesn't do everything you can possibly imagine, but what it does do is allow you to kind of use it in any way you want and get up and running really quickly because it's quite simple. Podio is at the other end of the spectrum from that. So where Trello is really easy to just pick up and start using, Podio takes a bit of getting set up, because you can use it for so many different things. It's almost like it gives you a framework and then you can build out exactly what happens to suit your own business. So this is something that lots of people in property use, but lots of big companies use it as well, because you can use it for in all manner of different ways in terms of workflows, setting up automations that fire when different things happen, and you can sort of track things the whole way through a process. There's absolutely tons that you can do.
I don't know whether to thank you for this one, Rob, or be angry with you, because I know I'm going to lose a lot of time to this resource, because this really does appeal to the geek inside me, and so much so that, as you say, before we started the podcast, I was asking you about a million questions about, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do that? So I think that's my Saturday all wrapped up, and that's what I'll be doing. Yeah, I think that gives a real insight into my life. But that's it looks like a brilliant, brilliant tool. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Trello. So to have something like Trello, but with bells and whistles on, it looks very appealing. So yeah, it's definitely got a few hours of my time coming this weekend.
Yeah, well, I think you put it quite nicely. Like, if you're the kind of person whose idea of a fun Saturday is setting up some kind of project management CRM tool, then it's probably the thing for you. If you don't love technology and you just want something that helps you and is better than just writing stuff down, but you just want it to kind of get out the way, then Trello is more the tool for you. But it's nice to have both, and so you can look into it and decide what's for you. So, Rob, I look forward to chatting to you on Monday and hearing how you got on.
Yeah, which probably isn't a good lead up for next week's topic, because we're probably going to no one will want to listen now. Next week, we're going to have a look at what we actually do day to day. Please don't. I won't put that in it, so don't worry. I'm not going to go through the boring bits I do on a Saturday. But actually, we found that from great feedback, and we really do appreciate it when you let us know if you enjoy an episode. We got really great feedback from the episode a few weeks ago where we looked at how Rob and I get so much stuff done, because obviously we got a few plates spinning. So people really, really enjoyed that. So we're going to take it one step further. Now you know how we get so much done, but we're going to look at what do we do during our days? How do we spend our time? So we're going to take you through a day in the life of Rob and Rob.
Yeah, we've actually got a feature in the magazine called Day in the Life, which is my favourite part of the magazine, because I'm always really curious about what people actually do. So what does an estate agent actually do all day? Actually, I'm still not sure about that. What do surveyors do every day? So what do property investors do every day. And we're in kind of a unique position because we are property investors, but like you said, Rob, we've got other things on the go as well. So hopefully, if you've got the same kind of slight voyeuristic instinct that I have, you'll find that interesting. So do listen next week for that.
Okay, so that's episode 171 done. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your continued support and reviews. We absolutely love it. We'll be back on Tuesday with Ask Rob and Rob. And of course, back with the juggernaut that is the Property Podcast next Thursday. So until then, everyone, enjoy your week. Take care and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Property Podcast. For show notes, all our past episodes, and to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast.